This is Vinny from the iMoot team. I'd just like to welcome everybody to Frederic Nevers' session, pushing the database activity to its limits. I've met Fred a number of times. We go back a few years. I think Moodle Moot somewhere, Hong Kong probably. Fred's taught over in Hong Kong, Germany, Bangkok, and now happy, I think, to have returned to Hong Kong, where he is the educational technology project developer and teacher of computer programming at the Independent Schools Foundation in Hong Kong. So thank you very much, Fred, for presenting for us again, as you have in previous years at the iMoot. And I hope everybody enjoys this session.
Hey, thanks, Vinny. Thanks for the intro. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for choosing this session. I hope you get something out of it. So I'm just going to get started real quick. So the idea behind this session is for me to show you what I've been able to do with the database, yeah, hopefully you get something out of it. So as you see on the screen, the database, if you're familiar with it, is quite a powerful tool, but out of the box, it doesn't look fantastic. The functionality of it is really awesome, but the looks and the user experience isn't perfect. I just want to show you a few bits and pieces to get from this here to that. We won't use exactly the same database, but we'll use the same process and the same ideas. Okay, this is actually a lie. I've just tried to upload that onto my website, and it didn't work. However, it is on the course part of the iMoot. You'll be able to see it there. It's called Cast Database. Now, it is a preset, so you're able to put it on your site. However, there is a bit that won't work, and that's to be expected. And I'll show you what it is. It's this bit here. Actually, you can't see because I've not shared my screen yet, but I will show you very soon. Most of the work actually, most of the database preset actually works, but some of it doesn't work. So, you know, what actually makes in Moodle, what makes it possible for us to customize the database? As you may be familiar with, there are some templates in the database activity, and the bit on the left there, the list, single, advanced search, and add template are where you're going to be able to define your structure and the content of your database. The CSS will allow you to define the looks, and the JavaScript will allow you to define the logic of your database. So we're going to take a look at that. In terms of structure and content, I'm going to introduce you to something you may be familiar with already, called Bootstrap, which is included in Moodle by default. If you've got Moodle 2.5 or above, so any supported version of Moodle has Bootstrap installed in there. Now, a word of warning, the version of Bootstrap, when you go to their website, the version that's inside Moodle is not actually the current version of Bootstrap. It says that it's no longer supported. It works just fine. And the day, if and when Moodle goes to Bootstrap 3 or Bootstrap 4, what I'm showing you today, the concept will be very similar, and there's just a few bits and pieces you need to change to get it to work. So the takeaway from my quick introduction is that everything I'm going to show you now, you can do as a teacher. You do not need to be an administrator at all. Any teacher, any teacher who has access to that course is able to do what I'm going to show you today. Yeah, without further ado, I'd like to show you quickly a quick demo of something I've been able to do. So let me share my screen. Please let me know in a moment. See it? I don't have the best connection in the world, unfortunately. Doesn't seem to be working, right? Can you see it? Might need to fire up another web browser. It seems to be dying on me for some reason. Hey, wouldn't be a tech presentation if everything was working, right? Give me a moment. Right, while I'm waiting for this to happen, I just want to, while I'm doing this, I just want to, tell you that this whole template situation in the Moodle database activity, when you see CSS and JavaScript, that's kind of an invitation to tinker, and I could never leave it alone. At the beginning, when I first started using Moodle, I didn't really use the database that much, but I must say that I found it too compelling to go and take a look and tinker with it. So I might need to kick myself out of this session and start myself up on another browser. So hopefully I won't disappear. Sorry about that, guys. It was working just fine, obviously, a few minutes ago. Nearly there. You're going to see me twice. Okay. Okay, right, nearly there. And we should be nearly there. Right. We'll edit that right later. Okay, and we're on. Are we? Yay! Awesome. Right. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so here is the database I've put together. A friend of mine asked me if I could do something to track CAS, creativity, action, and service in an IB school. Now, most of the IB schools use ManageBack, but some don't because they just can't afford the service. So I thought, I'd give it a shot and see the sort of things that you can do with database. So here are some activities that together and that I'm doing. So the sort of things you are able to do are the inclusion of Bootstrap progress bars, which will show automatically depending on the amount of things that are shown on the screen. I've been to sort of split words from a menu, for example, and then restyle those. I've been able to add tabs at the bottom. All this in Bootstrap, basically. Here is using the approval process here, and I've been able to change also the single view using the accordion views. Again, all of this is calculated on fly. Then I've been able to add buttons to specific places in the part of the website, and to have or to create sections to teach. Let me show you an example. For example, to a single view as a student, I can see the supervisor review, but I'm not able to enter the supervisor review in the entry. So C the reader cannot see the supervisor entries, for example. Same under here, I'm as a student. I'm only able to see my entries. I cannot see other people's entries. And I've restyled the page a little bit so that the search bar is at the bottom, for example, so there's less dead space. Yeah, so I'm going to show you how to do these things. Hopefully you'll have enough time. Now, we wasted a few minutes, and I apologize for that. Yeah, let's get started. So I've created a database called Reading Journal, which is a similar, well, almost tracking thing. And you can see on the Moodle course, the iMoot Moodle course, there are different steps. You will see presets with the different steps. So this session will be divided up in different steps, and you'll be able to go and download the presets yourself, and go and do the work and follow along if you want, or if you want to take a look at it later. So what we're going to do before we even get started is we're going to go and change the database a little bit. So I'm going to go into my reading database, and I'm going to go and edit it. Okay. So, edit settings. And here there is a bit of a trick. Now, this is Moodle, so I like to live on this, and if anything goes wrong, well. So there is an option you might not have seen before, the allow editing of approved entries. Now, what I've done doesn't take advantage of this, but this is a really nice option in Moodle 3. But here are the options that I've done. Approval required, yes. Allow editing, we're going to leave it to yes. I'm going to allow comments on entries. This is really nice for any tracking things. Entries required for completion. I'm going to say that students need to have read at least 10 books before it shows as completed. And here is the trick. If you want students not be able to see each other's entries, here's what you need to do. You set it up to the entries required before viewing. You set it to one more than maximum number of entries. So because a student will only be able to enter 14 entries, they'll never be able to get to 50. Therefore, they'll never be able to see people's work. Now, it's perfect, right? But you'll see the problem we'll come up with, and we'll fix that problem. So here I'll go save and display. I'm not going to add ratings or anything. I could, but I'm not. For here. So in your starter pack, you'll see that there is this very basic template. So I'm going to go and take a look at the list templates in the list view here. One thing I strongly recommend you to do when you work with a database is to edit your profile settings. No, sorry, not your profile, your preferences. And disable the at the preference level. Okay, so I'm going to choose plain text area. That doesn't mess up with my templates. See that? Now, if you're scared of code, I'll show you where you need to look at. Okay, I'm going to move that a little bit. Section a little bit bigger. So here is the template I've put together. It's a table with 5 columns. Okay, here they are, and you can see that it's split between repeated entry and footer. That's an interesting way of doing things. Here in the repeated entry, all I've done is a table row. So 1 starts TR, ends with TR, and then everything in between will be repeated for each record that is found in the database. And here it uses a sort of a templating system where you can add fields or actions. So here in my first column, this is a column here, I've added the user picture, the user details, then the book title, the type of book, the comments, and the evidence that's been, whether there's been any evidence or not displayed or shown by the kid. And here are some actions. Now you can take a look at what the actions are. Okay. Other things as well. This is new as well. As far as I know, the approval status was slightly different before. But actually, one you had to sort of steal it. Here I just close the table and that's it. Okay, so now we have a table. We have a table that looks very basic. It's very bare. Now with one code, you're able to change the look of that table quite easily. So as I said before, you want something called Bootstrap, and the version you want is 2.3. Okay. really is, you know, this website is going to be your friend when you work with the database. Now here at the top, there are three things that are important: the scaffolding, the base CSS, and the components. Okay, so we're going to go and take a look at the tables for now. Thanks for sharing the link, Judith. As we're going to go and pick this guy here. I'm going to go and you saw earlier on my table. All I do is add this bit here, and then save the template and take a look at what's going to happen if I list. It's made my table all pretty. If I add a new entry, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's a fake book anyway, so if I don't spell it properly, it doesn't matter so much, does it? Oh dear, my typing isn't great. And I'm just going to create it. See, that was new in 2.9. I think some of the entries are required and some are not, and that's going to allow us to do some pretty cool stuff with the database. I'm going to go and save and view, and my single view for the moment is very, very simple and very basic. You can see my table looks a little bit nice already with just one piece of code, so that's pretty nice. So now that would take us to our step number one if you follow it along with the downloads. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the single view as well and add some things to it. Okay, so we're going to go and change that a little bit real quick. Okay, so I'm going to go into the templates, a single template, and actually I'm going to delete. I'm going to go to my base Bootstrap, and I'm going to go to components. Sorry, now there's something very important that we need to understand with Bootstrap is that it follows a grid system. So each that you see must add up to 12. These things are called rows. So 1 row, 2 row, 3 row, 4 rows, and 5 rows. Each of those need to add up to 12. Yeah. So what we're just going to take that, copy and paste it into our work. And we're going to start perhaps with span 8 here, span 4 here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to build it. We're going to build it together. So here I'm going to put the book title. Here I'm going to put maybe the type of book and see what that does. Okay, so I'm going to save my template and view the single. Okay, so I've got my book title here and this here. Doesn't look great, but it's a start. Now we maybe are going to add some tags to it. Okay, so I'm going to turn that into heading 5, for example, and maybe I'm going to say what this is. So let's say this is the book title. Okay, and I might apply a class span class. Yeah, I'm going to apply a span a class to it. Span class equals maybe muted. You can see in the documentation what this does, but you'll be able to see with the and with those span. Okay, like so, and see what that does. Okay, so. Okay, so now I've got my book title and all the thing has been applied to it. So that's not great. So what we're going to do instead, we're going to apply that muted class to our h5. And here we're going to have maybe a pipe sign, for example, and then apply a span to that. And have just maybe, or maybe just a span and then strong. Okay, Josh, enjoy the beach. There you go, like so. And then I'm going to close this off here. Oops. And then strong. Okay. Okay. Now I'm just going to show you quickly so you can tags from here, from the Bootstrap. I'm not typing very quickly, so I'm going to have to jump to another section pretty soon. But you can see if you click on the menu on the left hand side here, you can see all of the different styles that you can apply to and other bits on. This is pretty cool. So let me go back here to template and see. So here it is. So it makes it look slightly different. Now, what I'm going to do in the interest of time, because then it's all the same, you're just using rows and then you split them in different spans. I'm just going to go ahead and upload the other database, and I'll show you how to do a preset if you're not familiar with it. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to read in general database. I'm going to apply a preset. Okay. So I've got something called step 2 in there. So let me just find that first. Input, and it's going to say here what I want to do. So yeah, I want to allow, and hopefully my templates should have been overwritten with the new thing. Okay, so this is what it would look like after I'd applied all of my ones. So you can go and take a look at the code and see how those tags were applied. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do we can take a look at the code, is to start replacing some of the text. So for example, here, I'm going to go and change this to a fiction book. And the idea would be change in the list this and perhaps make it look a little bit nicer. In order for us to do that, we have to get some JavaScript. Right? It might sound a little bit scary if you've never done it before, but we'll take a look at it together. So I've got some code that I'm going to copy and paste again from the work that I've shared with you, so you can see the process. I go to JavaScript and I'm going to copy and paste that. Okay. Now we're going to change that. So you can see in the example I've given you, we want to match the word creativity, but actually what we want to match here is the word fiction. So we're going to go and look for that in our code. So now that we've got that, we can go through the code and take a look at what it does. So change creativity every time we see creativity with fiction. Okay, we're going to do that. And then I'll explain to you what the code actually does. Although I've commented it, we can take a look at it together. Okay, so fiction. It is case sensitive, so please be mindful of that. Okay, and fiction words here. So let's take a look at what this does. Here, we're creating a variable, and inside that variable, we're going through the document, and we're getting every single element that has the name of activity type. Then for each item that we find, we go through the HTML, what's inside, and through that HTML, every time we find the word fiction, we're going to replace it with this entire bunch of code here. We could have replaced it with something else. We could have replaced it with another word, for example. And here we perform the change. Okay. Now I'm going to try and run that, and I'm telling you now it's not going to work, but that's fine. That's expected. Okay. I run it and it doesn't work. So what to do when it doesn't work? So you want to right click, and depending on the browser you use, it's going to look something like Internet, for example. I don't have any errors, but it's clearly not finding what I want. Now, the thing that I have is that my JavaScript is not actually running as such. So we're going to have a look at what's going on here. Okay, the JavaScript is not running, and it's for a very simple reason. It's because we haven't fired it off. We haven't actually put any code in so that it's. So we'll do something called function init, for example. Okay. Close this. We're going to open the curly brace, and at the bottom, we're going to do this. Yeah, Andrew, to answer your question, it is in theory, but to be honest with you, I've not had really good results with it. So I've just stayed with vanilla JavaScript, and it does the trick. It's a little bit harder to find the functions to use and so on, but once you have, and it's been documented like this, it's not too hard. It's not super easy, but it's not too hard. I'll try again to get with jQuery to get jQuery going, but I've not been able to do it so far. To be honest with you, I've not spent a huge amount of time trying to do it. And then to go back to this, we just need to go to the bottom page and then say window.onload. So that's when the page actually starts, or the page loads, and then you just say init. Okay. And now if I save that, that should in theory. Okay. So let's take a look at what's not working here. I'm not getting an error message, so there is another problem. Now I think the curly brace is that it's sort of the problem is because we don't have the class name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and say, okay, so our code is looking for, hang on, to go back to it. It's looking for something called something called activity. I put the curly in the wrong place, but that's definitely, there is something else anyway. That's not quite right there. So thanks for spotting that, though. I appreciate it. Here, look for something called activity type, but we need to check whether they're in our code activity type or not. So again, we right click on what we're interested in because we're looking through here. We're going to go into there and look for this. So our TD here, our table cell doesn't actually have a name attached to it. So we need to go and do that here. So go and do that. My template. And instead of calling it activity type, I'm going to call it because it just makes more sense in this particular instance. Okay. I'm going to go and change that and then save the template. And I'm going to go back to my list template, assign a class of book type, not a class, sorry, a name of book type to this particular thing. Okay, and then if that works, fingers crossed. Okay, that's fine. Now it works. Just so you know, you need to force when you create your script to make sure you you completely reload the page, because sometimes the JavaScript gets cached and you can't do that. Then you would do the same for nonfiction. So we're going to do that super quick. Doesn't look like on my computer anything really quick to, but I'll try my best. Okay, and here what we're going to do is to change nonfiction. I should capitalize it, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to. Okay, like so. And here I'm going to replace it with nonfiction. And just here, instead of blue, I'm going to use, say, green, for example. So it's called like this in Bootstrap. Again, you just need to go through the document to see what it's. Okay, and there you go. And now we've got this. Okay, so now we were able to do that. We could do that with evidence, for example, with yes and no. We could replace, instead of replacing with a name, we could replace it with an icon, with a button, with anything of HTML, really. Oh yeah, absolutely, Gareth. The code is not optimized at all. You know, it's just when I went through it, I've shown different ways of doing different things, and you'll see, like, for example, there are places where you could easily do for loops, for example. I just decided not to. This session is really for people who start using JavaScript, for example, or start tinkering with code, and they might find things like loops a little bit, you know, like more demanding loops a little bit complicated to look at, for example. But yeah, definitely, we could definitely make the code better. Okay, so now the next thing I'd like to do, quickly is to take a look at how to make some content teacher only. Now, what I'm going to show you here is not exactly foolproof, although there is a way to make it a bit more foolproof, but it would serve its purpose for for the majority of people who have JavaScript turned on in their browser. Now, if people don't have JavaScript switched on in their browser, none of what I'm showing you would actually be working. But for example, the fallback here wouldn't be a big deal. The words fiction and non-fiction would just appear, but not styled. So that the functionality would be the same. So the idea behind in some content teacher only. Don't have access to the actual code, the actual PHP, for example. We don't know whether a user is a teacher or not, but there are some clues on the page that can actually tell us whether someone is a teacher or not. For example, those fields, those 4 tabs here, only show for teachers and admins and people like that. So what we can do, it's take a look through the page using JavaScript and look for a word, for example, fields here. Now for this, we can use sort of CSS selectors. So I'll show you how I did that. Again, it's not perfect. There's a slightly better way of doing it, but it's an easy way if you get started to do it. So let me just go and grab some code that I've put in my folder. I'm going to go into templates here. Go back to the Java, and I'm going to add that perhaps let's say to the top here. It doesn't matter where I put it really. So here, let's go and take a look at the code. So create a variable to check if someone is a teacher or not. And what this does is it looks for a link that has a title that starts with the word fields. Now, quickly people go, well, hold on, like if a kid makes a link with the title of fields, then that would show them as a teacher. Yes, it would. But what I could have done, would be easy enough to do, would be to look for a link that has a title starting with the word fields, but only in this div here, which is something like nav tabs or something like that. So unless a kid added a link inside of a div named exactly the same as this, then it would be fairly safe. So there is look for this. If it is there, then show any div or any elements on your page that have a class of teacher only. And then if it's not on the page, then do not display. This basically sets the CSS or the attribute, of style to the attribute of display to none. Now, as I said, this isn't foolproof, but there is a way to make it foolproof, is that if you have a div element on your page that has a class of teacher only, and you make that div empty, and you actually populate the HTML here, say for example with something like I don't know, like something like that, dot inner HTML, and then equals, and then whatever. Okay. And if you do that, and if your div is empty to start off with, now if people don't have JavaScript turned on their browser, then they would see nothing because the div is empty by default and hidden by default. If you add that to your CSS, so yeah, it would just show as empty. And now if they have JavaScript turned on and they're a teacher, then it will work. But I'm not going to use that line here, but that would be the idea. So you can put anything in that inner HTML. So save my template to my list template here, my view list, sorry. And look, so for example, what we could do is hide the F, because for example, this could be done by a teacher. You know, a teacher could go and edit an entry and go, okay, so the kid tells me that he or she has read this book, but is there any evidence? You know, when I've talked to him or her, like, did it actually show as though she or he had read the book? We don't really want kids to see that, for example, or any student to see that, for example. So we can apply the style of the class of teacher only to this column here, for example. So we're going to go ahead and do that because at the minute it's not applied. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to apply the class. Okay, like so. And I'm going to do the same for, because that's the header, I'm going to do the same for this row here. And I'm going to save it. So now the teacher, it shouldn't make, but now if I switch over to my student account, hopefully now the column has disappeared, so it's no longer there. So that's a way to have only one template and make it look different depending on the type of person who is logged in, for example. This is not the same database though. Okay, I've not created it. Looks like I've created anything as a student here, so let's create that. Okay, so now what I'd have to do is to do the same field here. There shouldn't be any, that shouldn't be showing for a student, for example. And then I'm going to choose fiction, save and view. Now, fingers crossed, it has worked here. It just to show you those comments, that's really cool. That's a really nice addition. So this is a comment. Now, if I save the comment here, it's going to show up like this. It's nice, it's easy to use, and if I go as a teacher, it takes them up so I can see them right there. I don't actually have to go into the record itself. So that's pretty cool. I really like the comment section, the comments capability of the new database. So yeah, that's how to do the teacher thing. Now, one thing I want to show you, I think I've only got one more thing, is how to remove this. Because you know the sort of trick that I showed you at the beginning to say, well, you can only add 49 and then there's a maximum of 50, or whatever, I can't remember the other way around, and the bar also here. Now, at the moment, I haven't done that yet. I'll show you the code on how to do that, okay? Again, it's some JavaScript code, but again, if the JavaScript doesn't work, it's not HD, it look as nice, but also, so now if I go to place, hey, and I'm going to go into here and apply, you know what, I'm going to code here, and that will allow me to show you the another functionality of the code. Let me just see if it works. Okay, it doesn't work. So let's go and take a look at what's going on. Okay, it says here, yeah, I'm trying to do the code here, but I'm missing something. So let's go and see the code and what it actually does. My JavaScript here, and look at the bottom here. Okay, so the first bit here, move search bar to the bottom of the page. So it looks for something called data preferences, which, by the way, is the div that contains all those search buttons. Then I'm creating a new div, and I'm going to go a new variable, sorry, and I'm going to go and look for a div that has an ID of new pref div. Now, unfortunately, we haven't created that one. And then what this does is it moves the thing from the top to the new div that we've created. Now, I'm going to go to my list template, and I'm going to bottom, I'm going to put a div, new div of ID like so, and I'm just going to make it an empty div. I don't have to put anything in there, and save my template. Now, hopefully, so that's worked as a teacher. We'll go and see if it's worked as a student. Okay, as a student, and oh, look at that, that's disappeared as well. And that's because we have some more code. And we'll go and take a look. That's one I actually struggled a little bit, if I'm honest with you, to find a way to. The actual divs are all called the alert ones, you know, the red ones that tell you that there is an error message. And I didn't want to disable them all because some of them are quite useful, for example, when there are no entries. So I just wanted to do the ones that say the word, that contain the word you, because that was the same in both error messages. So just went to look through all of the divs that have the CSS class, this one here. And then whenever it finds one, for each, it would look for content you. And if the word you is present, then it would set the display to none. So you have done that. It's not perfect. Obviously, if your site is in a different language, if you allow people to use different languages on your site, then you'd have to have more complicated sort of queries to do that. I didn't find any other way to do it. Maybe you guys can think of something else. If you can, it'd be great if you could share. But this does the trick for you. Now there's you'll see in my example. I won't have time to cover this, but you'll see in my example that I've also the break lines here, so that there is less space waste, and that is done through the CSS template, and then you can go and take a look at that. So I've got 3 minutes left. I just want to show you how to apply something to only one page. So if I go to view single, I'm going to get a script error because we haven't got that div here, because there is no data preferences. It just won't find it, and it won't find the other div. So we have to limit our code to only one page. And to do that, we just need to tell us what type of page we have. So here, for example, with my single page, when I'm going to create a div at the bottom, and I'm going to give it an ID of, so div ID of perhaps something like is single. Okay, so that's telling me that this is a single page. And again, this is just an empty div. And I'm going to do the same for my lists, like is list. That's quite original. And the next thing we need to do is to go into the JavaScript and say, hey, just for this particular job for one page only. So it is here. Okay, so what we do is we say if, and I can't even remember what I called everything. So yeah, I remember now. So if document dot get element by ID, so that will allow me to go and get the element that I've just created that has an ID of is list, and I'm going to say, oops, I need to remember that, and then I'm going to put the curly braces around this, and I'm going to say just run this code for this page here, and view my list, see if it works still. It does. If I go here, the error anymore. So that's how you can. That's another way of having script only on one page. You will see on the template that I've given you, the cast template, that some of the code I have put on an actual template at the bottom of a template, and I believe it's at the bottom of the single template. You'll see that at the bottom there are some script, and I've put the script in there just to show you again different ways of doing things. So unfortunately, I won't have time to go into the calculations, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a series on YouTube of short videos showing you ways of doing things. Again, is it the perfect way of doing things? Perhaps it's not, but it's an easy way for people to get started and tinker on their own. Now, the beauty of using the database activity and the templates is that the templates you create are only for that particular database. That's it, nothing else. So any CSS or JavaScript that you do, even though with the JavaScript you can muck about bits itself that will only be in your database itself, in that one instance of your database. So that's really cool. So you can't really break anything. One thing I wanted to show you were the calculations. So we'll show you how to do that in the YouTube series if you're interested in it. And another thing would be events as well. So whenever a record is created, for example, you can get a notification, and that's part of the Moodle 2.8 and 2.9 and 3 as well, whereby you can select event monitoring, and I believe that Vinny did a session on that this morning. So that goes really well hand in hand, you know, has there been a new comment created, for example. So really, really cool stuff. So thank you very much. Now we have some time for Q&A if you've got some questions. So I'm happy to try and answer the questions to the best of my ability. But thank you to everybody who's through this presentation. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Yeah. So yeah, is there any question or anything?
Hi, this is Vinny. I'll just use this opportunity to jump in and say thank you very much for an awesome presentation, Fred. That's kind of just on a back channel talking to Gareth. That kind of thing is ever so slightly above my head. So it's really nice to see stuff like this at the iMoot, and that kind of really pushes people to kind of take that next step and jump into JavaScript and that kind of thing if you haven't done so before. So yeah, thanks once again for a really interesting presentation.
No, thanks, Vinny. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I really do. Andrew, I've as I said, like for cast tracking, used that, not personally, but a friend of mine did, and they seem quite happy with it. You know, it does the trick. Is it perfect? No, but it's free, which is a big factor for a lot of schools, and it sort of gets the job done. I'm currently doing one for my. I'm working at a new school, and I've got a bunch of primary school teachers who are interested in keeping a good reading journal that they can pass on from one year to the next. So. That'll be quite cool. I'm excited. I'm working with 3 primary school teachers working on this. I've used it before for sharing in my classroom. And I'm currently using it. Actually, I'm teaching computer programming for a computer for an extracurricular activity, and the kids are sharing their work together that way. I find it better than a forum when it's been set up okay. Yeah, so there are many different uses, you know, sharing lessons, yeah, lots of different things. So Sarah, I'm just reading your question. Yeah, I mean, for the scaffolding page, it's really just to set up your layout, your page layouts, really. Well, that's all I use it for in the database activity. Does that answer your question, or not really? Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Yeah, it is. If you give them teacher permission, like they can actually go ahead and mess about and not break anything, which is really, really nice. And you know, with the calculations, you know, if you're teaching, say for example, if you've got kids doing stuff on Codecademy, for example, they can really go ahead and practice their learning using this technique. That's a great idea. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good introduction, you know, and what can you do and what can't you do, and get them to do some lateral thinking. For example, you know, yeah, you can't have calculated fields on the database, but the data is actually, it can be displayed on the page or even hidden in divs, and then you can have access to the data that way. So it's really good for thinking. Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. Okay, thanks, Vinny. Yeah, so I'm going to put something on my blog in the next few weeks, like a series of blog posts showing in detail how I went about doing the CAS activity, and also I'll release the proper template, because you'll see when you use the template, if you decide to use the template, you'll see that the learning outcome is not working, the calculations. That's because it's linked, some of the fields, like 4 or 5 of the fields are actually hard-coded. No, actually it's 7. They're hard-coded, so you'd have to go and look for those fields. So that can be a bit of a pain. So I'm going to release a version where you don't have to worry about that. But I've just basically given you the version I had. So it's not perfect. Yeah. But again, thank you very much for, depending on where you are in the world, spending your evening or your morning or part of the night or part of the day with me. I really appreciate it. Sarah, my channel is I Teach with Moodle. And if you go and I'll say it on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Fred_Nevers, and the channel is I Teach with Moodle on YouTube, and you can go and subscribe. And then whenever there's a new video, it will send you an email to let you know that there's new videos there. So I'm hoping to upload the entire batch at the same time. Okay. I think it's going to be time for me to go so that others can be ready for their presentation. So enjoy the rest of your day, night, evening. Have a great time. Bye bye.